On today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to take a look at some signs that indicate what the Giants might do with the draft. We'll also talk a little bit about some remote throwers. That and more coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm Patricia Trainer, your host, P-Train, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for Giants Country over on the Fan Nation Network, part of SI.com. And a special welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, my newcomers, my everydayers, and everybody in between. You are all appreciated and loved by yours truly. Thank you for spending part of your day here with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's show, we're talking draft. What else? You know, 'tis the season for draft, and we're getting so close to the grand finale when we find out what the Giants and the rest of the NFL are going to do in the draft. And today we're going to talk about, we're going to start off with some, I call them conspiracies, but they're not really conspiracies per se, but just some things that I feel are worth noting that I think are going to tell us a lot about the direction that this Giants franchise is headed in. So we'll start off with that. And then we're going to talk about in segment 2, what I call remote throwers, things that I'll just, if they happen, they'll probably break Giants Twitter. But if they do happen, I'm going to tell you why it may not be as bad as it initially looks. And then finally, I have a special analytical study that I did on the loss of Saquon Barkley. I know a lot of people were upset when the Giants lost Saquon Barkley. They felt that, there was a betrayal. They felt that the Giants could have done more to keep him. That, oh my God, there goes the offense. I'm here to tell you it's not as big of a deal. And I'll explain why as we get to the third segment of the program. So again, welcome on into everybody. Appreciate you. Let's get started. Now, I always like to look at the Giants roster building process, not just in a vacuum, not just in the current year, but I like to kind of look at multiple years because I think that's how GMs generally approach roster building. They look at it in anywhere from 3 to 5 year ranges. All right. So with the Giants, what I am very interested in seeing, and I think this obviously is a key story for New York, is the quarterback situation. All right. Now, I think we all can agree that the Giants need to draft a quarterback in this class. I know people have said, well, there's always next year, the year after that. Daniel Jones's injury history, you can't trust it. And for the Giants to totally pass on drafting a quarterback would be a grave mistake, in my opinion. But I want to go back to when the Giants first signed Daniel Jones to that 4-year, $160 million contract. And I can't help but wonder, as we know, there is an out clause midway through that deal, which happens to be after this coming season. And a lot of people thought, okay, the reason why they put the Giants put that in there was because they probably figured, oh, with his injury history, why lock him up long term? And I've said on this program before that if they were convinced that Daniel Jones was their guy moving forward, they wouldn't have put that out clause in there at all. So I got to thinking, and I said to myself, I wonder if Joe Schoen put that out clause in there when he did, because he knew that this year's draft class was going to be knee deep in quarterback talent. And that, they probably thought, okay, look, we'll try and make it work with Daniel Jones, but if it doesn't, because of injury, because of performance, because of this, that, and the other thing, we've got an out clause. And, oh, by the way, we're looking at a deep quarterback class that regardless of where we're drafting, we should be able to come away with a guy who can be developed into a starter. And I wonder, again, if that wasn't a big factor in how Daniel Jones's contract was set up. Wouldn't surprise me, folks, because again, a GM, if he's worth his weight in gold, he's looking ahead down the line, not just at the current year, but down the line. What's going to be in the draft class, as far as depth at this position, that position? How does the free agency class project to shape up? And I would be willing to, bet dollars to donuts that that was a factor in the Giants structuring of the quarterback situation, or of Jones's contract, I should say. Now, interestingly enough, we all see how Brian Dable, and Joe Shane keep saying that the expectation is for Daniel Jones to be the starter once he is healthy. And I think a lot of people are hearing that as he's the guy until further notice, that they're going to run it back with him. Folks, I'm here to tell you that what the Giants do at the quarterback spot in the draft is going to tell us everything we need to know about Daniel Jones and what his long-term future is here. So if the Giants somehow get a quarterback at 6, and I'm not saying that I think that they will, I still think it's going to be a receiver. But if they do the, trade up, or they get a quarterback at 6, I'm fairly certain they will roll with that guy come next year. I think Daniel Jones is going to be looked at as a placeholder for them, once he's healthy. And it makes sense if you think about it. How many times have I talked about, you know, letting a quarterback sit for a little bit to get acclimated? Some of the greatest quarterbacks in the game sat for a little bit, regardless of where they were picked in the draft, and they got acclimated. And then when their time came, they were able to step in and perform at a decent enough level. All right. A luxury, by the way, that Daniel Jones did not have when he was picked in 2019 with the 6th overall pick. So, you just look at the whole, scenario with this quarterback thing. And I'll tell you what, even though General Manager Joe Shane has done a pretty good job to date, not tipping his hand as to what he may or may not do in the draft regarding the quarterback position, the signs are all there that they're going to potentially look to get a guy. I mean, you can't ignore, like I said, the fact that they put the out clause, and that just so happened to fall in a year where the quarterback class talent is so deep that you can probably get a guy, regardless of where you're drafting in the first round or even in the second and third round if you wanted to. You know, it's just, it's too much of a coincidence for my taste, at any rate, to ignore and say that, oh, they're going to run it back with Daniel Jones come, hell or high water. So for those of you who think, Daniel Jones is the guy moving forward for this year, yes, and it makes sense because, again, you let the kid get ready that you draft. You let him get acclimated. And in the meantime, you let Jones and Drew Lock do the heavy lifting, because this year, I don't think a lot of people are really counting on the Giants being a playoff team. And if they do make the playoffs, they probably won't go deep into the playoffs. So it just makes too much sense to go in that direction. And I think that's what the Giants are kind of looking to do as far as, the quarterback position goes, without so much as going on record and saying as much. They're not going to come out and say, oh, we're going to move off of Daniel Jones after this year. Not their style. So that being said, there's hope for those of you who don't like Daniel Jones as the quarterback moving forward. Those of you who do, we'll see what happens. I mean, I have raised in the past the possibility that if Daniel Jones somehow balls out, stays healthy, that maybe they look to trade the draft pick, much like the 49ers did a few years ago or last year rather, with Trey Lance. I don't think, though, that that's what the Giants are thinking, at least, at this moment. But of course, we shall see. All right, coming up next, remote throwers. What would be some scenarios that would absolutely set Giants Twitter on their ear? We'll talk about it right after this. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and to make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can do more of it. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you find your assigned therapist isn't a match, you can switch at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Happy to have you with us here on this Tuesday. And coming up on the Locked On Giants podcast, remember I told you I would have some guests for you? Well, I'm going to have some guests for you. Amongst them, Dane Brugler is going to be with me on Friday. We're going to tape that show in the afternoon, so I may delay my Friday show into the afternoon so you have something to go into the weekend. But Dane Brugler of The Athletic will be one of my guests. I'm going to have Nick Filato on the show. A lot of you know Nick. A lot of you love Nick as much as I do. We're going to talk Giants draft, of course. And I've also invited Coach K, Keith Sanchez, who is the other half of the dynamic duo of our Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Damian Parson, who I've had on the show. You guys all know Damian and love him as much as I do. So Coach K is going to be on the show as well. We're going to talk draft talent, just basically trying to get as many different opinions on these draft prospects as possible. You know, it's always good to hear, to tap into what, these guys are hearing because there's just so much information floating around. A lot of it is misinformation. I get it. But just bringing you as many guests as I can. Still waiting on one other guest. I can't tell you who it is yet, but I'm waiting to see, if this person becomes available. This would be a big one if I can get him. So fingers crossed that he comes on the show with me. But that's what's coming up on the Locked On Giants podcast. So I hope you will tune in. And also, for those of you who asked about the live show, yes, we are going to do a live show before the draft. Just got to get with Tana and Bad Dog and set a date. But as soon as I know, you guys will know. So anyway, let's get into our next segment. And that is what I call remote throwers. All right. So you're watching TV and something happens and you don't like it. You're watching a sporting event and you get a bad call or a bad decision and you have the remote in your hand and you just chuck it because you're just so angry at what transpires. So hence the expression, the remote thrower. But these are things that I think would break social media, giant social media, that if they were to happen, I think fans might go ballistic, rightfully so. But I think if you kind of take a step back and take a deep breath, maybe it won't be as bad if you think about it. So what are the remote throwers, as we call them? The first one, in my opinion, trading up in this draft. All right. Now, I know there's a bunch of you out there who say, look, if the Giants like a quarterback, they should move heaven and earth to get the guy. If it means trading up, if it means trading away assets next year, do whatever you have to do to get the quarterback that you want. Guys, I don't agree with that. I mean, I do, but I don't. And why do I agree with it? Well, yeah, I agree with, within reason, do what you can, but not to give up the farm. All right. Not when you have so many needs to get to fill. The Giants, we've gone through the needs before. Inside linebacker, they could use more interior defensive line depth, offensive tackle, receiver is a must. I just feel, a quarterback too. Let's not forget about that. I just feel that if the Giants have to trade up, I could see them potentially having to give up at least a second round pick, probably in this year's draft to do it. All right. I don't think I want to see the Giants do that. I would like to see the Giants in the first 2 rounds of this class come out with a receiver and a quarterback. And I think if they trade up to get the quarterback, they're going to have to sacrifice somewhere. And I just want to go back to last year for a minute, if I could. Now, this, I think, kind of flew under the radar with a lot of people. But if you remember, I was screaming that the Giants needed to add an edge rusher. And of course, the Giants in the draft, they traded up to get Jalen Hyatt, a move which I did not hate. But because the Giants had to trade up, and I think they gave up, I can't remember, it was a fourth or fifth round pick. But because they gave up a draft pick, they basically had one less pick to address what could have been an edge rusher. So, if a roster is a little bit more solid and a little bit more settled and established, trading up and just being willing to give up the ranch probably makes a little bit more sense. I don't necessarily think that's the way to go, especially if you're not going to start the guy right away. So for me, if the Giants traded up in this draft, I could see the logic. I would not agree with it. And thinking about it, I just wouldn't. I would be more content with them staying put at 6 and taking one of those stud receivers to help whoever the quarterback is this year as next year and the year after that. I would not mind if they traded down and picked up additional draft assets. But the trade up, nah, I don't think it happens. I'd be stunned if it happens. I would be disappointed if it happens. I know a lot of you are going to say, you're wrong, it's got to happen. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. That's my opinion. Okay. What else would probably set the internet on fire? If the Giants did take a quarterback at all. Now, again, I do believe the Giants are going to take a quarterback. I think they have to. I think this class is too deep not to. But I've seen some mock drafts where the Giants didn't take a quarterback. And for the life of me, I disagree with them. I absolutely disagree with them. This is a deep class. If you can't find good value in at least the first 3 rounds of this draft at that position, then I think you need to go back and look at your board again. And I really believe that if the Giants do not take a quarterback this year, that's going to set a lot of people's hair on fire. Now, we had Coach Gene Clemens on yesterday, and he said, well, look, people are acting like, next year's draft class is not going to have any quarterbacks. They will. And those quarterbacks will not, the class isn't as deep as it is this year. All right. Everybody, even pro scouts have said that this is a historically deep quarterbacks class. But here's the thing, if you're the Giants and you don't want to be drafting in the top 10 every year, are you assured of getting that quarterback? Well, maybe if you trade down and you pick up an extra first round pick for next year, then you have the ammunition to trade up if you want a quarterback. But then now you've got to get the kid acclimated again. And, are you going to just throw him in there to start? And I don't know how much that makes sense. So I just think that if the Giants don't get a quarterback, Giants Twitter is going to be, pretty disappointed. Now, a lot of people, I think, will be disappointed if the Giants draft J.J. McCarthy at 6 or even trade up to get him. I'm kind of indifferent regarding J.J. McCarthy. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. If they took him at 6, would I hate the move? Not really. I don't think I would like them to do that. I don't think that would be my first choice for them. But, I could see the logic behind it. But I know that there are people out there that are going to say, what are they doing? Why take J.J. McCarthy at 6? Well, we don't know how the quarterback board is going to fall. I mean, I ran a mock draft simulation on a different simulator for Giants country. And you know what? I had a choice between Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams at 6. Now, that probably will not happen in real life, but you never know because these simulators and the popular opinion of the draft analysts and, the people that put together these big boards and everything, everybody's got an opinion. And My opinion isn't any better than, my colleagues' opinions or, it's all a matter of beauty in the eye of the beholder. And in the end result, obviously, it's all about what the Giants, feel is best for them. They put in a lot more time and effort into, sorting all this stuff out. So that being said, you know, I think the Giants do need to get a quarterback. JJ McCarthy, if it's him, I'm going to trust the Giants' evaluation. So, it is what it is. I mean, look, whoever they draft, it's not like we can do anything about it. I mean, we can throw the remote, obviously, if we don't like it, but at the end of the day, the guy is going to be here for however many years as they work to develop him. So, all right, coming up next, a lot of you guys and gals were despondent after Saquon Barkley left. I'm here to tell you it's not that big of a deal, and I'll explain why after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you're having trouble finding those last minute tickets to your favorite concerts, shows, and sporting events, Game Time has you covered. They offer a wide selection of seats complete with seat views to help you decide where you're going to sit, and they're constantly offering last minute tickets through flash deals. There are no hidden fees. You'll know exactly what your deal is before you check out. And Game Time even has tickets available as late as an hour after an event starts, making it truly the best place to find last minute deals at amazing prices. Want more reasons to trust Game Time? They offer event cancellation protection, and if you find your tickets in the same section and roll for less elsewhere, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Terms apply. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And if you were one of those people that just were gutted because Saquon Barkley left the team, because he joined the Eagles, I feel you. Obviously, the Eagles benefiting from anything Giants related, it stinks. I get it. But, some people, when that happened, they were like, oh my God, there goes the offense. The best offensive player the Giants had. What are they going to do? Oh my God, the sky's falling. Folks, I'm here to tell you that it's not as bad as it seems. Now, I did this study over on Giants Country, but I'm going to talk about it here as well. I did a comparison using stats from Pro Football Reference, which are, tied into, I think, Stats Inc., between Saquon Barkley and Devin Singletary. Now, in a nutshell, the Giants really got a good value with Devin Singletary. So let's talk about the numbers. Okay, so Saquon Barkley with the Eagles, his contract is for $12.583 million APY. Pretty hefty. Giants weren't going to spend that kind of money. They got Devin Singletary, who has led his team in rushing every year, wherever he has been, for $5.5 million APY. Big difference. Big difference. Now, let's look at some statistics here that will hopefully, make you guys realize that Joe Shea made the right move here. Pro Football Reference has a statistic called success rate. And what the success rate is for a running back is if he picks up at least 40% of the required yardage on first down, 60% on second down, and 100% on third and fourth down. So that is all compiled and they come up with a success rate. Saquon Barkley as a rusher had a 42.5 career percentage success rate. Devin Singletary, 48.8. Okay. As a receiver, all right, same criteria. Saquon, 38.1%. Devin Singletary, 45.9%. All right. Now, going back to the rushing. Broken tackles. Let's see, Saquon had 75 career broken tackles in 1,201 Carries, Devin Singletary, 61 in 888 career carries. So Singletary with a little less tread on his tires. Not a high volume back, but, effective when he's been out there. I mentioned receptions, catch rate. Saquon Barkley, 72.7%. Singletary, 75.8%. All right. Broken tackles, drops, and interceptions. Right. Barkley, 32 career broken tackles, 26 career drops, 5 interceptions. That per Pro Football Focus. Singletary, 15 broken tackles, 20 career drops, 1 interception. So put all those stats together, folks, and you know what? Giants did okay. They probably made the right decision in not spending, an arm and a leg to retain Saquon Barkley. As good of a locker room citizen as he was, and I'm not trying to take away, his contributions on the offense or what he brought to the team, but to have offered him the kind of contract that the Eagles offered him, it would have been stupid. And, I never got the impression that that's what the Giants wanted to do. I think they kind of wanted to get a running back somewhere in that neighborhood of, $5 to $6 to $7 million. And they got that with Devin Singletary. Because remember, folks, the Giants are going more towards a committee approach at running back. So, to pay a guy like Saquon with the intention of having him as part of a committee and to pay him like, he was going to be the bell cow, it just didn't make sense. So yes, the bottom line is, yes, it stinks that he's with the Eagles. Not a surprise per se, because he is from that area, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, it stinks that he's with the Eagles, and a lot of people think he's going to have a better year behind that Eagles offensive line. But I think in the long term, the Giants did the right thing with regards to that running back spot. And, I found those numbers really interesting, because I thought to myself, gee, did they make a mistake? And the numbers suggest that they didn't. So, all right, everybody, that's going to do it for us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Now, tomorrow, I am scheduled to have Nick Filato on the program with me. So I hope you will tune in for that. And again, other guests we have coming up, Keith Sanchez from Locked On NFL Draft, as well as Dane Brugler of The Athletic. And there may be one more. I'll let you know once I know. Thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, or if you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day, or if you're just spending time with us throughout your day, we appreciate that all the same. I'll see you tomorrow, Giant fans.